The ex-husband charged in the murders of Dr. Spencer and Monique Tepe is expected in court today. Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas is live for us in Columbus, Ohio. He's outside of the Franklin County Municipal Courthouse this morning. Cody, good morning to you. Share with us, please, the latest on defendant Michael McKee.
Well, good morning to you too, Julie. Yeah, crazy story after a 10-day manhunt. Michael McKee arrested. This is Monique Tepe's ex-husband, arrested for the double murders of Spencer and Monique. And here's the kicker, Julie. According to court documents, police say they saw Michael's car in the area shortly before the murders and then leave shortly after. All of that caught on surveillance. And then they eventually tracked that car all the way back up to Rockford, Illinois. And as you mentioned in your opening statement, Julie, he is a vascular surgeon in Illinois, in Chicago, to be exact. So just a very horrific story here. Now, he has a court appearance set today. Now, he had to appear in Illinois first because they had to start the formal extradition process. And then he'll come right here behind me in Columbus, Ohio, to the Franklin County Municipal Court where a bond will be set. And then this case will move on to a grand jury to see if any more charges will be filed. And then he'll be in court for there and then he'll have to go to a grand jury for a potential indictment to see if those additional charges will be filed, Julie.
Right, Cody. Cody, any particulars, if you know, about what time we expect him to make the appearance and when the extradition process is expected to get underway?
Well, I was reading and researching, and he said he had to make his first appearance in Illinois, of course, before being extradited down here. Now, that hearing was scheduled for this morning, so it could be any day this week or even later this afternoon, depending on how quickly that goes up in Illinois before he gets down here to Columbus, Julie. But again, he has to go through there, then it goes to that grand jury to see if more additional charges will come on. But very horrific story, Julie. And you know, it's very interesting because the house had no signs of forced entry. Now, it was one of those houses that had a keypad, a key code to get into the front door. So that begs the question, how did he get inside this house?
Right, Cody, certainly one of the most troubling questions in this case. Someone had to have known that code in order to enter. So if it was Monique Tepe's ex-husband who did this, how then did he get the code? Cody, I understand that there was an opportunity for friends and family to pay their respects for Dr. Spencer and Monique Tepe on Sunday. Tell us, please, a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, absolutely, Julie. You know, this community just really shaken by this because this is an up-and-coming community in Columbus, Ohio, in the Wineland Park area. They lived in a beautiful home. They had a celebration of life and visitation yesterday before having that was early in the afternoon. Then they had a vigil later in the evening. People coming out in droves, showing their respects, you know, leaving flowers at the home, leaving flowers at the visitation, and just really, you know, just reflecting on such a horrific crime in this area and hoping that, you know, it doesn't happen again. But they are very thankful that somebody is finally in custody after this more than a week and a half manhunt leading all the way back to Monique's ex-husband, which is just you know, it's just the worst part about it. They're all the way back out of state in Illinois, but they're very happy that someone is in custody now.
Most certainly. Our love and prayers go out to everyone who loved this couple so much. Cody Thomas, live for us in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you so much for that report this morning. We want to continue the discussion now. Let's bring in retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer and attorney and former SLED agent Tommy Pope. Good morning to you both. Jen, let me begin with you with that troubling question that Cody and I were just talking about. How might Dr. Michael McKee, the defendant who's accused in this case, have obtained the code information to the front door of his ex-wife's home?
Well, you know, very early on, it was so concerning that they had their wedding there. When you have your wedding there, imagine all the people who might have been exposed to that code. Everything from friends, family, associates, and also the caterers and so on and so forth. They were married, even though it's been about 9 years ago that they've been divorced. They were married. They likely have many mutual friends. And I just wonder if somewhere in different conversations, he at some point obtained that from a wedding goer, from a mutual friend.
Oh, that's a good thought. That's a really good thought, Jen. Yeah. Tommy, let me ask you about another thought. Could Could this have been obtained through a hacking? I keep thinking for some reason it's stuck in my head, a hacking of a phone or some device to get a front door code. Thoughts on that?
I would be surprised. I think you would see that more often, if that was the case, by people that didn't know each other, just criminals in general. Relationship-wise, even them being married, like Jen said, there may be relationship. It might be the one we always use, where she always used her birthday or whatever, if that's the case. And I was thinking, I know this happened at the middle of the night, but according to how their relationship is played out over the years, you can't say that he wasn't given, to drop something by, according to how testy their relationship was. I see they have a Ring camera at the door. So if it was the front, hopefully, I could even see him knocking on the door in the middle of the night with my car broke down and I didn't know who else to ask, because all he really needs is the door open to get a pistol involved and back him on and get him on into the house.
Yeah, you're both raising such good points. Was he given it? If it was an amicable divorce and there were no problems, was this someone that was trusted? And like you said, we know police have said they believe the couple was killed on the top floor, but we haven't heard whether or not they answered the door in the middle of the night. So, those are all really good theories that you both postured here about this. Jen, I want to go back to you. The idea of the why now is so troubling, I think, for a lot of people. I was just doing a discussion on the radio a few minutes ago with my friends back in Pittsburgh at the Odyssey station there, and they were saying, if she was divorced since 2017 from this man, why now? What do you think about that time frame, please?
Well, I find it very interesting. If you look back at their divorce, it was amicable. He actually got to keep the home. There was no alimony or any sort of money awarded. In addition, she says in those papers that I guess she paid for her own wedding ring. So it was a really clean split. They had a private judge. That's typically where you just work it out behind, the headlines, right? And work out your divorce and it's over. But this is what I think. When I look back as an example on different cases I had where grudges were held, if you look at a recent case, the Brown University shooting, that guy, Valente, held a grudge for 3 years. He had multiple plans for going and killing his former colleague and committing the Brown shooting. I think this was festering and festering and festering over years, and the happier she got and the perfect life she had, the more he wanted to destroy it.
Oh, Jen, I think you're right on the money. I think you're right on the money there. And you both know this, and Tommy, legally looking at those divorce documents, there may not be anything on the face that says the relationship was dangerous or volatile or anything like that, but we know from experience what's on paper isn't always true, right? Do you think it's possible, Tommy, that maybe he exhibited signs of abuse or violence or something early on that made her say, ooh, I got to get away and I don't want to anger him more. We're not going to put any of this in. I'm just going to get out. And maybe he was still trying to exert control. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, digging into it, you look, Garth Brooks, because most divorces have country music as the background music for it. So Garth Brooks said, she's going to make it, he never will. And I think if you look at a divorce, the fact that it was amicable, the one that doesn't want the divorce is the one that seems to carry it. She's moved on with her life. And as far as it being a length of time, it's like Jen said, there may have been a triggering event. There may have been one Facebook post where she's just finally gotten so happy that he can't stand it anymore. Or they did this, or, and you don't know what's cooking in his head. And you're right, Julia, it might not be in the paper. And the fact that it was amicable from a division standpoint, in some scenarios may trend that she just wanted out, and, wasn't worried about support or things of that nature. And so I think, as you guys have said, I think it festered and finally he brought it to fruition.
Right. This just doesn't suddenly happen. It's like something in the middle is missing. It's missing. Jen, in terms of a triggering event or something that is in the present. Thoughts on the 5-year wedding anniversary that we know was about to happen here?
Well, I don't think that's probably a coincidence. I think that can be at least considered. I think also we're going to find out so much more now that they have the suspect in terms of interviewing his closest friends, his closest associates. It's difficult for people to hide their resentment and not to make statements. And so I think they're going to find all sorts of information about what he was truly thinking and this grudge that he seemed to have harbored.
Yeah, that's a perfect point to end for now on the discussion. We're going to continue it in just a moment. Jen Coffindeffer, Tommy Pope, thank you much. Stand by, please. As we hit a break, of course, we're thinking about the family and the friends who love this couple so much, Dr. Spencer and Monique Tepe. And you wonder about his work colleagues. We know the panic that they had so early on that morning. It makes you wonder, did they have any indications that something wasn't right with Monique's ex? We'll talk about that next. Plus, some friends of former battalion chief Kevin West take the stand to testify against him in his murder trial for the death of his wife, Marcy.
Did he say something to you about Marcy's passing?
Yes.
What did he say?
That he was relieved and that a burden had been lifted off his shoulders.
We'll get you ready for the Au Pair Affair murder trial, plus the latest on the mysterious killing of an Ohio dentist and his wife in their home.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
The tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Our boss did not report for work. We haven't been able to get a hold of him for 3 hours. We are on site and we can hear.
Okay, I got the body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a wellness check. We just came here and he appears dead. Okay. There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood.
911 calls from the co-workers of Dr. Spencer Tepe were at the center of this investigation. The arrest of his wife, Monique Tepe's ex-husband, is what continues trending this morning. Now, Michael McKee sits behind bars. This is the defendant here after a nearly 2-week-long manhunt in connection to the murders of his ex-wife, Monique Tepe, and her husband, Spencer Tepe. Here's what we know about this defendant. Police say he was taken into custody without incident. McKee is his last name, was married to Monique Tepe in 2015. 2 years later, they filed for divorce. That was in 2017. He graduated from Ohio State University. He's listed as a 2014 graduate of Ohio State's medical school as well. So he was working as a vascular surgeon, we understand, and won't be working for the foreseeable future till this case is resolved, that's for sure. We know that we've got 2 doctors here. So we have this defendant who's a medical doctor, and we have one of the victims who's a dentist, and it was his co-workers who really were sounding the alarm bells early on. The morning that he didn't show up for work, office opens at 8 a.m. and at 9 a.m. they were calling 911. And they were saying it's really concerning that he and his wife weren't answering their phones, especially her. What if anything, should we read into that? Let's bring back in retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindeffer and welcome in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Mario Gallucci. Jen, I'll start with you on this. Is this was something you were saying you were troubled by from the outset? Your thoughts now?
Right, absolutely. It was troubling that within well less than an hour, his co-workers were so concerned that they even called their boss, who was vacationing in Florida, and within less than an hour, a call to 911 was made. So that alerted me to the fact that they know something. There was something that made them on edge, I think, far beyond being a little bit late to a dental office. And now I think we're going to find out that maybe they knew information about concerns that she might have had.
Right, Jen, I'm with you. Mario, do you agree that that was really odd? There was so much panic so early, and it seemed just questionable. It seemed just odd to many of us that at 9 a.m. there would be 911 calls wanting a welfare check at the house. Your thoughts now seeing the arrest of the ex-husband. Does it make more sense to you?
So I agree with Jen. I think that we're going to find, that there's going to be a report that there was some information that there was something going on in the background here. One of the news outlets actually reported that Tepe's family knew immediately who was responsible for the death. I forget which news outlet it was, but what I think in the coming days, there's going to be a lot of information that comes out. It seems, the news outlets are reporting that it was uncharacteristic for him to be late, but, being late and then coming, calling 911, calling somebody in Florida or his boss, and then actually driving to the house to do your own welfare check because you're not satisfied with the police response indicates to me that they had a heightened level of safety concern here. So in the coming days, I really believe we're going to have a lot more information come out on the relationship that was going on in the background.
Yes, you said that so well, Mario, a heightened sense of safety concern for these two. Yes, exactly. Jen, I want to go back to you on how this guy was caught. Police say it was through his car, that a neighbor's Nest camera took some video of this man around the window of the homicides going to a car. Police tracked the plate to Illinois. The car belongs to Dr. Michael McKee, the defendant here. Your thoughts on that detective work?
Right. It was well done. We knew there was so much video in and around that area with all these residents there, and then also with the street camera footage. The issue was, of course, for law enforcement is looking through all of that. It's hard to really put into words how tedious of work this is. It takes literally sitting in front of your camera and looking, or in front of your screen and looking at second after second for hours and hours of day. And we know there was a lot of footage, so that's a lot of officers that were involved. And I think that's why this took so long to solve.
Yeah, definitely. And how about the fact that I think it's still hard to wrap your mind around. So this is a vascular surgeon we have as a defendant here. And if he is the monster that, police are saying he is, they're saying that he's the guy that did these homicides. If he is, how stunning is that he's saving lives day after day, and then police say he ended 2 lives. Mario, I want you to weigh in on that if you would, please.
So I find it very interesting that in their relationship, we don't have any evidence that there were ever any domestic incident reports that were filed. We haven't heard anything that there was trouble in their marriage other than it ended quite quickly. I think it was less than 2 years they were married. So it seems a little unbelievable that out of nowhere. But Jen said in the last segment that this could have been something that was festering for years and years and years. And now, they're coming up on their 5th year anniversary. They have 2 children. It looks like they have a wonderful life. And, the jealousy just overwhelmed him and caused him to do this. I mean, he didn't, he took the time to do it in the middle of the night. He traveled, 500 miles, but he didn't think to, get a car that wasn't associated with him. So he wasn't really thinking that logically if he, committed this crime and thought it out, but didn't think enough not to use his own vehicle. So I really believe that this was just a festering rage that was going on inside of him. If he can't have her, then nobody else will.
Yeah, exactly, Mario. I think so, too. That's really the only one to make sense of it, that it was building and building. And for whatever reason, now was a time, if he's the guy. Jen, I want to talk to you about the ballistics evidence. So we know 3 spent 9mm shell casings recovered at the scene, no firearm left at the scene. We haven't heard, I've been waiting, I keep searching. I was searching all day to see if investigators said anything about recovering a gun. Your thoughts, if they don't, let's just say they can't find a murder weapon, or any firearms belonging to this doctor. Is that at all detrimental to the case?
Well, a couple of things. When they said they found the vehicle, they also said they found evidence. And when I heard that, immediately I thought, did they find the gun? They didn't say that, as you said, Julie. They didn't say what the evidence was. But I wonder if there was any mapping, that he had printed anything out, or that gun. If they don't find the gun, of course, they can track possibly a gun to him. Look, these were precise shots, one to the chest on her and 2 other shots to him that were all kill shots. So when you look at that, did he practice at any ranges? What was he doing to prepare? Were there other guns he purchased? So I think they can track that aspect of the gun.
Right, if he purchased a firearm, yes, exactly. And if it was one that holds 9mm ammunition. Jen, great points. Mario, great points. We'll leave it here for just a moment. We're going to continue discussing this case throughout the day.